Hello students, welcome to our channel of Parallax tutorial. My name is Pallabi and today we are going to start with a brand new series on topic-wise past paper questions of IBHLAA Mathematics Paper 1. This is a no calculator paper and we are going to start with the topic of functions. In today's video, we are going to cover two questions along with their subparts. The remaining subparts will be covered in the next video, the link for which is provided in the description. Okay, let's begin. So here we go. Now, as you see, this is 2012 paper 1 and it's a question of functions. Now, paper 1 is the paper where you're not allowed a calculator. So your concept has to be crystal clear, especially when graph questions come up, right? Okay. The question over here tells us to find or to draw. So let's read the question. The graph of f of x is already given. This is x plus ln x. Let's write that down on the graph. This is x plus ln x's graph. And on the graph below, you have to sketch f inverse of x. Now, before beginning this question, let's have a brief introduction on how inverse of functions really work, right? So we have f of x, okay? Assume this to be a function machine. So there will be some x input values which you will give to this function machine. All the input values which f of x can take constitute the domain of the function. And you get the corresponding output values or y values, right? So this is how a function is defined. So there's a function which is, for example, it's x plus ln x. You input a value of x into it. And if it's in the domain of the function, then you'll get a corresponding output. Now, what is an inverse then? So inverse of a function is also another machine, a different machine, okay? It has a different formula. In that, you input the same values which you got as output from the previous f of x. Now, this is the reason why we swap x and y values. So if you recall how we find inverses of any function, you must have done this previously. Let's say function is given to us like this, x plus 3, and you're asked to find the f inverse of x. So what you do? You write y as x plus 3, then you swap the x with y, and then you make y the subject, and that becomes your inverse, right? Now, we are trying to understand why do we do this step? Why do we really swap x and y? Because the output which you got over here from the previous function, f of x, goes as the input into the f inverse of x. When you do that, you should get back the same value of x. So if that happens, then f inverse of x is the inverse function for your f of x. I hope this made sense. Now, this logic has to be always remembered because just knowing this mechanical form may not help you with questions like these especially, right? Okay. Now coming to the graph part. So suppose you have to find or how do inverse of functions behave graphically, or how they look to, how does a function looks and how does it inverse look graphically. So what we do first is we draw an x is equal to y line. Okay, this is the line y is equal to x. I hope this is clear. Now, the question is on the graph below, sketch the curve of f inverse of x. Now, here comes the beautiful part. So, the inverse of a function would be reflected along the line y is equal to x. So it will be something of this sort. Let's neaten up this a bit. Doesn't look very neat, right? So it will be like this. Actually, it will be reflection. Okay, so it will be equidistant. I hope you understand that, but nobody is going to deduct points for that. Okay. So basically, f inverse of x will look like this on a graph. Now, this point where the two functions intersect with the x is equal to y line is very important. I hope you understood why the function actually reflects along the x is equal to y graph, right? Obviously, this is where the swapping happens, remember? Okay, let's move on to the next part then. So this is the answer for the first part, which is the 2 marker. Now look at the second part. Find the coordinates of the point of intersection of the graph of y is equal to f of x and the graph y is equal to f inverse of x. So what would be, or where will these two graphs intersect each other? How do you find that? So let's look at f of x first. So we have f of x, which is given to us as x plus ln x. We see that it crosses the y is equal to x graph, which means y is equal to x plus ln x, and y is equal to x over here. So you can put x over here as well, which means ln x is equal to 0. Which value of x gives its logarithm equal to 0? It is ln 1, right? ln 1 is 0, so that means x is 1. If x is 1, you put it back into the equation. What do you get? 1 plus ln 1. And what is its value? So 1 plus ln 1 is again 0. So you get back a 1 as your function. So x is equal to 1, y is equal to 1. That's the point where x plus ln x intersects with y is equal to x. And that will be the same point where f inverse of x will also intersect with y is equal to x. Therefore, both f inverse x and fx intersect at x is equal to 1, y is equal to 1, or 1, 1. I hope this made sense. Okay, take some time to absorb this in. This is a 4 marker. Obviously, because they're testing your concept of inverse functions and how it works and how you are able to, whether you're able to relate to the line y is equal to x and solve them, the question. Okay, let's move on now to the next question. So this was question 1. We move on to next. Now, there's a function f which is defined. Now we already know what the domain is, right? 0, 3 pi by 2. What does it mean? Let's draw a quadrant diagram. You have 0. Remember, in a quadrant diagram of trigonometry, what do? We go anti-clockwise for positive angles. If we check this, the domain is given as positive angle. So we go anti-clockwise, and every pi by 2, which means 90 degrees, we stop. So pi by 2, then pi, then 3 pi by 2, we will stop over here because the domain is only consisting of 0 and 3 pi by 2. 0 to 3 pi by 2. When we write 0, 3 pi by 2 in broad brackets, it means all the angles which are in this region, 0 to 3 pi by 2. That is this reflex angle which you get, okay? All the angles included in this, right? Now, the function is given to us as e to the power minus x cos x. The question says, state the two zeros of f. So you have to state the two zeros of f. Zeros of f means what are the values of x for which f becomes 0. So clearly, e to the power minus x cos x will become 0 where? Cos x becomes 0 where? If you look at this, cos of pi by 2, remember you cannot go beyond this domain, okay? So one is cos of pi by 2 is equal to 0. So x is pi by 2. That's one value, or 1, 0. And the other one would be, again, exactly at 3 pi by 2. So cos of 3 pi by 2 again will be 0. So you'll get a 3 pi by 2. That would be your answer for these two zeros. So these are the two values of x for which f of x becomes 0. Now comes the second part. So I hope you understood the two zeros, right? I think it is 2 marks. Let me just check how many marks this question holds. So it is 1 mark. Okay, 1 mark. Then comes the next question, which is also a 1 marker. And we have to sketch the graph of this function. Now let's see how do we sketch the graph, right? So remembering, so we're going to draw a table here. So we have x and we have f of x, which is e to the power minus x cos x. And we are not going to go beyond. We are just taking 0, pi by 2, pi, and 3 pi by 2. The reason why we are doing this is, we have already discussed, this is 0, this is pi by 2, this is pi, and this is 3 pi by 2. So all our angles will lie in this domain, right, of x. So if we put x as 0 over here, cos 0 turns out to be 1. Let's start sketching the graph. Remember, you're not allowed a calculator here. So you have x over here, you have y or f of x over here. Again, y and f of x are the same thing, okay? So when you get a y value, you're actually getting the function's value. Function of x, remember, it's dependent on x. So f of x over here would be, when you have x as 0, f of x is 1. So let's say this is 1. Then let's name the x coordinates. This will be pi by 2. This will be pi. This will be 3 pi by 2. At x is equal to pi by 2, we already know it's 0. So it will become 0. Let's bring down the function. Then at x is equal to pi, what will it be? So cos of pi is -1. So you'll have some negative value because it's e to the power minus pi over there. So you'll have some negative value which we don't know what it will be for pi, okay? And then at 3 pi by 2, some negative value, and 3 pi by 2, it will be again 0. So it will go back to this. So the graph would look like this. Let's draw a better graph if this is not very readable. So we have okay, so we have the x-axis, we have 0, we have pi by 2, we have pi, we have 3 pi by 2, and this is 1. So the graph starts from 0, 1. Let's use a different color. This is 0, 1, then pi by 2, then a negative value, then it has to come back to pi, 3 pi by 2. And there we go. That's how the graph would be. It will not go beyond this because the domain is restricted. I hope this helped. This question has a third part, and this is the third part, which I will take up in my next video. Just read this question. It's a 7 marker, so I'm going to take my time to solve this. And have a look at this question, and why don't you solve it or try to solve it first? I can give you a hint of how this looks like. So the region bounded by the graph. So the same graph we are talking about. Let's bring back that. Yeah, so we are talking about this graph. Okay, region bounded by the graph and the x-axis and y-axis, which means this part, okay, is denoted as A. And the region bounded by the graph, x-axis, is denoted as B. So this is B. Show that ratio of area A by B is given as this. Now, how do you do it? We know from integration, yes, calculus. So from integration, we know we can find the area under the curve, right? And this curve's equation, we already know. What was it? This was same, e to the power minus x cos x. That's our curve equation. So I repeat, that's the hint I'm giving you. Then you'll try it out yourself. And if you can't get it, or even if you get it, you can just check out the next video where I will be solving this in detail. So f of x is e to the power minus x cos x, right? And what you do is you integrate from 0 to pi by 2. That will give you which area? A. And similarly, when you integrate pi by 2 to 3 pi by 2, same function, you'll get area B. How you will integrate it? That I'm going to keep it as a suspense. Okay, it will be integration by parts. You can try that out and see if it works, okay? See if you get the ratio and check out my next video for this solution, right? Okay, please don't forget to like and subscribe the videos. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.